Angry mobs. I think America's getting fed up with it. Something tells me it ain't going to work this time. The more bullying, the more violence, the more obnoxious behavior from the left, the more they're going to get shellacked in November. But the mobs that are showing up at the justice's house, plus the militant activists that just firebombed in Wisconsin, a pro-life group, and the leftist organization is called Jane's Revenge. Their motto is, if abortions aren't safe, then you aren't either. Well, how long is America going to put up with this? They're about to get a backlash. Now, I have just heard something rather interesting from Jonathan, our trusty scribe, who has got some details on this abortion bill. I did not know the abortion bill that the left was presenting, that Manchin is evidently going to vote against, that it is so bizarre. I mean, what is actually in the bill?
Well, it's not just codifying Roe v. Wade, which Manchin said that he would have agreed to vote yes on, but it is incredibly extreme. It essentially, on a federal level, says that abortions are completely legal all the way up until late-term birth, which most Americans do not agree with. A lot of Americans agree with Roe v. Wade, but they don't agree with late-term abortions. They generally stick to around like the second trimester, but most people do not agree with late-term abortions. So this would be an incredibly extreme abortion bill, like passed off as a women's health protections bill, which is it's not at all. It is one of the most extreme portions of legislation, which I think we should absolutely. I think Democrats did a disservice to themselves.
And the Republicans aren't saying anything about it. What's really irritating is the cowardly Ahab. Go look at Jezebel and Ahab. It's like Jezebel's the left, Ahab's the right. Passive. And so instead of speaking up and defending this moment for pro-life, they're strangely silent, which is the reason why I want to talk to you right now about this. expressvpn.com/Lance. expressvpn.com. If it's one thing when the Republicans don't talk, it's another thing when people are eavesdropping on what you're doing. And the government is getting more invasive, from the World Health Organization all the way to surveillance of individuals. You need to go to expressvpn.com/Lance right now. Find out how to protect all of your devices, protect your identity from protect yourself from being hacked. And even when you travel to foreign countries, how to open up 70 or 80 different platform opportunities for you to be able to anonymously go in and watch movies and do different things, especially with the weird way in which government control is taking over. And we went through the COVID experience. I want to have more choices and more protection and more, frankly, I want to surf off the grid. expressvpn.com/Lance. Smart people are doing this now. Protect your identity. We're winning, we're winning, we're winning. Do not despair. You see, even this outrage that is coming out every now and then on these broadcasts, it's a healthy thing. It really is. The Bible says, be angry, but sin not. Anger is an emotion that even God has, and it is an appropriate reaction to unrighteousness.
It reminds me of Festivus. Festivus for the rest of us, with the annual airing of grievances. Sometimes it feels that way.
Well, I think that perhaps we should have a segment in the show, which would be like, revival news, progress, where we're winning the battle, and spiritual insights into what's taking place, because we do need the spiritual component, because this is a spiritual war. But then the John McLaughlin segment from the McLaughlin Group, which I remember. How many of you write to us your comments if you remember John McLaughlin? Remember John? Issue 1, Morton Kondrucki. And he would go around with Jack German and Pat Buchanan and Eleanor Cliff and Fred Barnes. And I used to watch those on Sundays after church because they were so educational. But he had the thing called the Outrage of the Week. I want to bring it back. Okay. I want to bring it back. I want each of you prepared to share the outrage of the week, because that way we can have one segment which is dedicated to outrage rather than an entire broadcast.
So hard, Lance. There's so many things to be outraged about, though. But I'll do it. I think we can do it.
All right, we're bringing President Trump in for a moment. Wait, President Trump's calling in. What do you have to say, Mr. President?
Fox and Friends in the morning, they're very honorable people.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Fox and Friends. Shout out to Fox and Friends and our friends at Real America Voice. Rob said, we love you. All right, so here's the deal, Lucille. 368 Democrats and Republicans voted to betray America. Democrats and Republicans. How? By $40 billion of useless aid to bail out wealthy oligarchs in the fourth most corrupt country on the earth, Ukraine. And I listened to Lara Logan today on a Rumble broadcast. We have to get Lara on. She's doing all these broadcasts, and here we have access to her, and she's a friend of ours. And I should really prevail upon my sources and contacts. How many of you would like to have Lara Logan on? We could bring her right down here. She's so interesting. So anyway, here's what Lara said. She said the left has a playbook for how they sold Ukraine. They have a playbook for how they sell pro-choice. They have a playbook for how they sell LGBT and transgender. She said it's all the 2012 Second Amendment dossier that they have. They handed it out after Sandy Hook to kids and to students in order to explain how the left beats conservatives and Christians all day and night. And here's what they said. Do not talk about the Second Amendment. Do not talk about the Bill of Rights. Do not talk about anything other than emotional stories. Tell emotional stories. And what Laura pointed out is that the left wins because they always, through disinformation, they don't talk about what they're going to take away from you, what they're going to impose on you, what they're going to change. They're not going to talk about the fact that more money is going to be given for the border of Ukraine in a territory we have no vital interest in than we put into our own border. And remember when the government, we don't have the money for a wall? What was it, like $4 billion to protect America? We're going to have 1 million to 2 million surging over this summer. More drugs, more destruction, more crime, more sex trafficking. Why? Because the government didn't have the money. Well, they just gave 10 times that much in another down payment over to what? I want to know, who are the American contractors that are going to do the rebuilding in Ukraine? Because they're the ones that are being paid off by your tax money with government projects. That's right. $4 billion for the foreign military financing program to support Ukraine and countries affected by the conflict. It's the NATO Eastern Flank countries. Why aren't $4 billion coming in from the European Union? Why doesn't the EU come up with the money? Why is America coming up with the money so that the EU doesn't have to pay for its own battles? $500 million is going to go to support the specialized facilities of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. $500 million is going to be issued through banks. I wonder how much of that's going to go into the pockets of American contractors that are working in Washington. Anyway, you got to know that your Republicans signed off on this. And I'm going to list it. I'm just going to post it. I'm going to post it in Lance Wallnau on my Facebook page. It's 368 Democrats and Republicans vote to give Ukraine $40 billion. This is during the period of unprecedented inflation, where they're printing the money, by the way. They don't have a plan for where it's coming from. These guys, I'm telling you, they are the judgment of Almighty God. These are the Philistines that God has said, all right, this is what you want? I'm going to let you have. I remember before the election, I had one great concern, and it had to do with a verse I was reading, which was, I'll give them quail till it comes out of their nostrils. And I thought, oh boy, because when God wanted to deal with his nation who rejected him because they were complaining, they wanted something, they wanted more meat on the diet, God said, I'll give it to you till it's coming out of your nostrils. My big fear is that we're getting policies from the Philistines in public places now that is like everything they do is causing the pain to come right out of our nostrils. And so it's not even begun yet, because the economic devastation is going to continue to unravel. The inflation is just the beginning. If the dollar, through Biden's incompetence with Saudi Arabia, with Afghanistan, with India, with China, and with Russia, If what Biden and his dummies have done causes the dollar to be decoupled from the global petrodollar, benchmark, then we could literally have the mother of all collapses of the dollar, and in which case $33 trillion starts to come home to the United States because other countries are going to be buying it. Now, I'm not trying to alarm you on this. I'm just trying to say that I think that the pain is designed to change the behavior. And it's not you guys. You guys got to be patient. It's not even the leftists, because the 25% of the country is, I'm sorry to say, I think they're just mentally gone. But it's the rest of the country. It's the middle of America that's awakening. We're seeing evidence, Mercedes, every day of millions of ordinary Americans awakening. It is the Great Awakening. And they're awakening, and it's the ripest spiritual moment I've ever seen. Because God-fearing, but people that don't know God personally, people that have a sense of God, they realize something is wrong, and they're not being bullied into submission like in 2018, 19, and 20. They're pissed off. Mm-hmm. And that's actually a positive thing if we can direct that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who are waking up. I mean, it's like you get in an Uber. I mean, lots of people, just normal everyday Americans, cannot believe the price of gas, are looking for baby formula and can't find it. And they attribute it to Democrat policy. So, the nice thing is, I will say, with the quail coming out of our noses, there's a real stark contrast between how things ran under Trump and how things are running under Biden and the Democrat control. So I think a lot of everyday average Americans are waking up to it.
And I want you to catch this. In Wisconsin, the Antifa, BLM, left-wing brown shirts are now doing their militant activism by committing acts of arson and vandalism and personally threatening anyone that works for pro-life. So that you've got a militant pro-abortion group claiming credit for Molotov cocktail arson attacks at the office of a pro-life nonprofit organization. They call themselves Jane's Revenge. How can you advertise a criminal operation like this and have a following, an Instagram handle or a Twitter handle, and a page where people can fund you and find out how to join you when you want to blow a property? Here's what they graffitied on the side of this clinic where pro-life Catholics work. If abortions aren't safe, then you aren't either. Threatening their lives. That makes me mad. What makes me mad is that the office of the Wisconsin Family Action was attacked on a Sunday of all things. And so I think this is going to I think it's going to backfire. You're not going to hear about it on the news, but it's not going to take much for Americans to say enough, enough. We watched what they did on January 6th to people that didn't. 5 people killed on the Capitol, the worst insurrection since the Civil War. It was five innocent people killed. None of them who had guns were killed, or they suffered heart attacks because of the emotional trauma and stress of the event. They were not this company of Jane's Revenge Antifa anarchists. So I think the government's going to have a reckoning. I like what Matt Gaetz says. Every committee that comes to power in November is going to be an investigative committee, and we're going to do a forensic, flip the rocks over and see what crawls out from under them on January 6th, on the dossier, on Russia, even on COVID policies and the big pharma companies. All that it takes is courage, people. All that it takes is courage and mobilization. We can actually turn this country around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, Lance, though, I think what's scary is that here in the midst of all this rioting, we've got Supreme Court justices, their houses, their addresses being doxxed. You've got the president encouraging people to go protest in front of the Supreme Court Justice's house, things that are illegal. They are losing their grip. I think that there's a pro-life generation that's emerging, that when this was passed, Roe v. Wade was passed 50 years ago, we didn't have 3D imaging. We weren't able to see, we didn't have DNA testing to know, the baby's DNA is totally different than the mother's, that the blood type could be totally different. If you just know this much science, if we're supposed to trust the science, and that's their own narrative, I really think there's a younger pro-life generation that's waking up. And yeah, why not push it back to the states? What's so wrong with that? Balance of power, to your point.
I believe that it's going to backfire. I think the disposition of Americans now, slow to get there, but once they're there, it hits a boiling point. And when we come back, we're going to talk about what we do to push back.
You know, everybody talks about being prepared. What happens when the bubble bursts? What happens when the dollar collapses? Are you ready? Are you prepared? Do you have emergency food kits? Do you have gold and silver? I want to talk to you about something you might not have heard of yet, and it's called hydroponic gardening. And it is one of the coolest things I have secretly fallen in love with over the last 8 to 9 months. I have an entire gardening system, and let me tell you what, it's enough food not to just feed my family, but to feed my neighbors. I have 36 different types of plants growing in this thing. I have lettuce, I have beans, I have strawberries. I have so many different things, and it's just one more tool in my arsenal to making sure that I'm ready to take care of my family and my friends and my neighbors if need be. And so I want to tell you about it. It's this really cool system. It's called Let Us Grow. And if you're interested in finding out more and finding out how you can have one of these, it grows vertically. It's a hydroponic garden. You might not even know what that means. It's an entire system where it's just water-based. There isn't a ton of dirt. You don't have to worry about bugs and pests or anything like that because you can actually do this in your home, which means you can grow plants year round. It's so cool. I just did it through the entire fall and winter. And like I said, I have just had such abundance with it. So I want you to check it out. You can go to lancewallnau.com/garden and get all of the details on the Let Us Grow system. And be sure you stay tuned because I just put one together for the office, and it took me less than 10 minutes to put the entire system together, and it just snaps together. You fill it up with water, you give the plants their nutrients. 30 minutes per week is all you're looking at for maintenance. So I'm telling you, go check it out. I'm going to have before and afters on the screen when I'm talking about this so you can see the type of abundance I'm talking about. Be prepared. Go to lancewallnau.com/garden to find out more.
Well, we're back now. I can't believe we're in the final and fourth segment, which is time just overtakes me when I'm doing this program. But I want to cover something about these angry mobs, protests. I just got done mentioning about how the left is unleashing its fake groups. See, it's the same activists all the time changing their names. Like, I forget what did I call that one. It's called like Nancy's Revenge.
Jane's Revenge.
Jane's Revenge. Yeah, Nancy's Revenge. That's Pelosi's. It's Jane's Revenge. So Jane's Revenge, and where they're saying if abortions aren't safe, then you aren't either, and they're bombing offices. I'm telling you what, man, if the FBI doesn't consider that to be a dangerous proof, not that there are conservative Trump supporters that are a domestic terror threat, but that the left-wing radicals are a domestic terror threat. But you won't get that out of Merrick Garland because he's bought and paid for by the devil. So I should probably be more charitable than that. But I do think, you know what the Bible says? There are people that sell themselves to do evil. And what that means is that we pray for all rulers and all leaders, and we're supposed to love all people, but you got to know that there's three kinds of people in the world. There's the wise, the foolish, and the evil. And those that are evil are people that are already sold to do evil. They're not going to turn around. And the more truth and the more light that they see, the more intentional they are about suppressing it and working against it. And the reason I'm saying that about Merrick Garland is because I take it personal when he attacks you as moms and dads that are concerned about your child being poisoned by racism, and then he sicks the FBI on you to do surveillance of you or threaten you or intimidate you when you go to a board meeting or school board meeting. That's the kind of tactics I expect from the criminal syndicate that the left has become. But then when it comes to protecting the justice's house, I mean, if this was Keegan and Sotomayor and their houses that were being suddenly besieged by angry, Trump, MAGA hat wearing, shofar blowing Pentecostals, you better believe they'd be up in arms about this crime. But no, when it comes to conservative justices, they can go on and invade their privacy, just as they attacked Tucker Carlson's house a couple of years ago, show up right on your street, and the neighbors boarding the doors, mad at you because you're bringing this controversy into the neighborhood. It was a flipping neighbor of Kavanaugh that actually invited people in to stage from his house their march to go down. I'll tell you what, D'Souza might have a point. He says, why don't we just organize our marches against the liberal justices?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see how inactive they are when we show up in mass at the doorstep of the liberal justice to protest the baby murders.
That's just a problem. We're like law-abiding citizens. We're people who are like, oh, don't do anything illegal.
Well,
you know what I mean? So it's like they won't be prosecuted, but if we showed up, we would be prosecuted.
We put Governor Glenn Youngkin in. And so you know what we did? We ended up saying, well, Merrick Garland, we know he's a goofball, but you're the governor. These justices are living in Virginia. So he was shamed into having to contact, Merrick Garland on the behalf of Justice Samuel Alito. These people are in violation of federal law, going in and stalking and harassing a judge or a cop and his children.
Yeah.
So Merrick Garland gets a letter from the governor of Maryland. He gets a letter of protest from the governor of Virginia. He gets Senator Chuck Grassley, sends an official document saying, get off your butt and do something. Finally, Merrick Garland says, oh, well, based upon, so he slowly starts to provide more protection to the justices' houses. Just letting you know, how does it work? You have to keep the pressure on. They won't do what is right because it's right. They do what is right because they have to.
Worse yet, they feel like they're justified in using and doxing. Like, it's the weirdest thing. Like, so to me, like what we were raised with, Lance, is right, turn the other cheek. If somebody does wrong to you, don't take offense. In their mind, if you've been wronged, if you have gone against whatever the religious sacrament belief is of the progressive ideology, violence is justified. Doxing is justified. Get up in their face is justified. Those are the religious beliefs of the progressive ideology. Is violence, is threatening, which is a complete counter to what a traditional Christian or Jewish or Muslim person would believe. Anyone believes in a monotheistic God. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's...
Well, I would say Muslim. They'll behead you.
Well, I would say not all Muslims are like that, but that's just me. I'm just saying they're monotheistic.
I'm just saying you don't see people taking cavalier pot shots at cartoons on Muhammad these days. Right in Texas, they had a shootout over that.
I would say I think that my illustration is that a majority of people who believe in a monotheistic God, who follow the things that are written in their religion, would say you should not return violence with violence. But it is a progressive ideology that is one that believes in violence. That was more of the point. I definitely think there's radicalized Muslims.
Jonathan is pointing his finger in the air. Yes, Jonathan, you have something to add to this?
Well, I do. Yeah, exactly what you were talking about, Mercedes. And the issue is when you conflate words with violence. So that's really the point that we're at, is people are saying your words are essentially violence against me, so I can retaliate with physical violence because violence is violence, which is not how we're raised, not how we think, but that's how a lot of people on the left think. So,
great point, Jonathan.
Right, and so they equate your words with violence, and so that's the reason why you have one of the characteristics in the last days is men will be fierce, lacking self-control, and I think you're seeing that from Will Smith jumping up on the stage to Dave Chappelle got just tackled the other day, and the truth is that America's a great petri dish for what happens when freedom loses its conscience, because then it becomes free to hurt and intimidate. And then you actually lose freedom entirely, it becomes lawless. But what I want to say in the last 5 minutes we got here is that we're living in an interesting era of time where it looks to me as though I look for the trends, the mega trends, the trends that tell me what's really going on. And what's happening is right now, McCarthy had an embarrassing script that came out. Liz Cheney just really betrayed him and revealed to Republicans how McCarthy is actually, working to protect her and was working with the January 6th cover-up, basically the attack on the protesters. And a script came out which was very embarrassing for him. What I'm saying is we're living in an era where the information is being revealed and you can't keep things secret. And so another one is Lindsey Graham. Now, Lindsey, we all have problems with Lindsey. Every now and then he does the right. He's like Bill Maher. We all are happy when he gets it right. Most of the time he gets it wrong. Bombshell audio reveals Lindsey Graham claiming the nation will unify around Joe Biden after January 6th. He may be the best person to have, right? So Lindsey, who didn't understand the protest at all, he totally didn't understand it. I mean, he sided with the Democrats on saying everybody that went there was ginned up by Trump, and it was he totally didn't get it. He doesn't understand the base at all. Anyway, Lindsey Graham is recorded as criticizing Trump, saying he plays the TV game and he went too far here. That rally didn't help. Talking about primarying Liz Cheney, he created a sense of revenge. Liz Cheney again. Why is it that McCarthy and Graham and these guys all love the Republican that is actually a progressive Democrat running as a Republican, that hated Trump, tried to impeach him twice, and attacks the MAGA movement as though they're terrorists? You see what I'm trying to tell you, folks, is Lindsey Graham just got leaked on an audio. McCarthy got leaked on an audio. And Manchin and Bob Casey could break this one out. Mercedes, tell me about what's going on. I didn't know that Casey was in that was the Casey with Roe.
Yeah, you're just going with the lead there.
Burying the lead? No.
You're burying the lead.
I'm killing the lead. Go ahead.
It's like telling the punchline of the joke. All right. So turns out Bob Casey, okay, so he's a Senate Democrat from Pennsylvania, and he says he's going to vote in favor of the sweeping abortion rights legislation, the Women's Health Protection Act. We were just talking about that. Manchin is the one guy, one Democrat that says, listen, I've always been against abortion. I'm not going to vote for this. And so Democrats are in the Senate are trying to get to 60 votes. And then if they do, they pass this whole bill. But I was reading, I didn't know this. So this is coming out of the Washington Examiner, that it was actually Governor Bob Casey Sr. This is Senator Casey's father, who passed one of the most high profile anti-abortion laws. And so it says in 1989 that he imposed a 24-hour waiting period before an abortion and required a married woman to notify their husbands. And then, so that law resulted in the landmark case, Planned Parenthood versus Casey. So I was sitting there reading everything from Alito last week, and we're looking at, Roe and Casey and how they don't have precedent for the Supreme Court to really rule on them. And it should be a state issue for them to decide. And I was like, oh my goodness. So this guy's dad, he creates a law that seems common sense, right? Hey, you got a girl pregnant. It's 50% of your DNA. Listen, you got to tell the guy, you got to tell the husband if you're going to go get an abortion, you got to tell the man if you're going to get an abortion, and you got to wait 24 hours to think about that decision. And that was so outlandish that it ended up with the Planned Parenthood versus Casey. So you just look at these things, Lance, and you look like, wow, how different from father-son. And you think of like, how much of that's a spiritual issue? So those are my thoughts. I thought it was wild.
And there again, he's being outed because Manchin basically sold himself as an anti-abortion guy. And he's recorded saying he's all for sweeping abortion rights legislation.
No, Manchin is not.
I'm sorry, not Manchin, Casey.
Yeah.
Yeah, Casey's presented himself as anti-abortion, and he said he's going to sweep abortion rights registrations aside. He's got this idea that he's actually going to be going in the opposite direction. But Manchin, who is the anti-abortion Democrat senator, seems to be like the only.
Pray for him. He's saved us more times than I can count.
He has. I mean, my gosh, it's amazing. Well, the last 22 seconds of this broadcast, I'm only going to tell you this in 18 seconds. You want to go to lancewallnau.com/garden, and I want you to see how you can have flourishing, full vegetation in your home, regardless of the supply chain interruption. See you next week.
Thanks for listening to this Lance Wallnau broadcast. If you enjoyed today's show, make sure to subscribe and share the episode.